Welcome to Wisdom Exchange TV, where we interview women leaders internationally who have a social impact in their communities and beyond. I'm Suzanne F. Stevens, founder of the YouMeWe Social Impact Group and your host. In this episode, we'll provide actionable, conscious contribution insights to create social impact to empower you, your organization, and your community. So lots of learning and inspiration, all to make your contribution count. We also invite you to join the conversation and post questions on our guest's exclusive wisdomexchangetv.com page. So I'm so excited today to welcome our guest, Lisa Curtis, founder and CEO of Kuli Kuli, located in Oakland, California. Kuli Kuli is the leading brand pioneering a new sustainably sourced superfood called moringa. Moringa is a protein-rich leafy green, more nutrition than kale. Now I'm hooked already. I've got to try this product with anti-inflammatory benefits. Kuli Kuli produces powders, bars, and wellness shots. The moringa is a sustainable sourced product and is produced all over the world, but particularly in Niger by African women and other small farmers around the world, and is sold in 11,000 US stores. Lisa began working on Kuli Kuli while serving in the Peace Corps, and alongside her amazing team, has grown it to be a multi-million-dollar social enterprise. To date, Kuli Kuli has planted over 12.6 million moringa trees, partnered with over 2,400 farmers, and has provided $4.4 million in income to women-led farming cooperatives, nonprofits, and family farms. Lisa was recognized on the Forbes lists of 30 under 30 in 2018. And something that I find fabulous, in addition to all of that, is Kuli Kuli is a certified B Corp. I now invite Lisa, and very happy to have you on Wisdom Exchange TV. So welcome, Lisa.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Kuli Kuli, I have to start there because our listeners will want to know, what does that mean, and why did you call your business Kuli Kuli?
Yeah, it's a good question, and honestly something that doesn't get asked enough. So I started working, as you said, with moringa in the Peace Corps, and I was in a rural village in Niger, in West Africa, and was feeling like I didn't get enough nutrients in my diet. I'm a vegetarian, was eating mostly rice every day, and was just really tired all the time. And so I asked a couple women in this health center where I was working, what can I eat that will make me feel better? And they pulled these leaves off a tree and mixed it into this peanut snack that they called Kuli Kuli and said, here, eat this, it'll make you feel better. I had never heard of moringa. I'd never thought to eat tree leaves, but these women and ate it, and it made me feel so much better. And so, when I started working more with them and talking more about this plan, and the thing they really wanted was a way to sell it in the US, I decided that kind of that original idea of, this food that sustains you and sustains other women around the world, that Kuli Kuli was the fitting name for that moment.
It's a great name. I love it. I love it, and it's catchy. Now, what was the catalyst for you to start this organization? I mean, it's one thing to have a snack that makes you feel healthy, but you were in the Peace Corps, and you have a communications background. So all of a sudden, you're immersed into this organization. So tell us about what was the catalyst for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest catalyst, and really what I went to Peace Corps to do, was to understand from my community how I could be useful. And I did a lot of interviews, a lot of talking to different people, and saying, what can I provide that would be most helpful to you? And one of the things that came out was that they wanted a way to sell this crop in the US, and that would be something that would help them grow more of it, use more of it locally to improve nutrition. And because moringa is so easy to grow and it's a climate smart crop, it was a really easy crop for them to cultivate. So, at age like 22, I was like, sure, yeah, I'll help you sell moringa in the US, no problem. Like, not really knowing what I was getting into. but have been working on it ever since. And we've had a lot of success. I've got a great team and a great group of farmer partners that we work with.
If I'm understanding correctly, it's rural women that are actually growing this plant.
Yeah.
So who was it that actually said, we want to sell this in the US and how can you help us?
It's sort of interesting you should ask, because the original intent was they just wanted to sell it, and we were going to sell it in one of the larger markets in Niger. So like we were in a rural village, we wanted to sell it in the closest city. And then kind of the longer version of the story, there was a terrorist attack, and I got evacuated out of Peace Corps. I had 48 hours to pack everything up and say goodbye to everyone. And was talking to them like, I'm so sorry, I can't continue. And they kind of brought up, well, maybe we could still work together, and maybe there's a way you could help us sell it in the US. And I think there's a woman named Safia who runs one of the women's groups there that had the idea of, maybe we can go bigger than our local market and go to the largest market for superfoods in the world, which is the US market.
This woman thought of the idea, and what else did you do to find out how realistic this opportunity would be from getting it from Niger to the US market?
That's a really good question, because I think sometimes founders tell their stories and it sounds like I had idea and like business appeared, and that's not often the case, and it certainly wasn't the case for me. I came home from the Peace Corps without any money, and so like my ability to start a business was really limited. So I had to get a job first, and this was kind of my nights and weekends passion project. And one of the things that I really sought to do was to understand, can this work? Will this work? So just talked to everyone I could think of, and then took kind of smaller steps of like, well, can we, get a small amount of moringa, put it into bars and test it at farmers markets? Will people buy it at farmers markets? And then it was, well, can we do a crowdfunding campaign? Will people, vote with their dollars and put money into this crowdfunding campaign to make it happen? So there's a couple of different litmus tests along the way. And finally, I'm like, I think people want this. I think people are interested. So I took the leap and quit my day job and dove full-time into Kuli Kuli in 2014.
A lot of international passion projects, if you will, get started with a toe in the water until someone can completely commit, and understandably. So would you advise that to others that want to start a project? You've traveled somewhere in the world, locally or internationally. What advice would you give to people to take an idea and make that idea a reality?
Well, lots of advice. I think there's a whole process that's in between this sort of idea and reality. I think the first thing is really, really figuring out for yourself, is this something that I want to pour, my blood, sweat, and tears into? Because starting a company, you're sort of asking for a world of pain. You're signing up for, at least a decade of struggle. So you need to care about it enough that you're willing to really do that. And then I think you want to test the market. I mean, you want to understand, like, yes, this is something that me and, my head thinks is the best idea, but the other people think it. Well, other people buy it. And that was one of the biggest things for me. I think, everybody, when they heard, they were like, that's cool. Yeah, we want to help women in Africa. But it's one thing to sort of look at it from a charitable angle and think that it's a good idea. And I think it's another thing to, put money and say, like, yes, I'm going to purchase this product. And that's really what the farmers markets and the, crowdfunding campaign really helped us do.
I love a couple things that you're saying there, and I just want to emphasize them is, sometimes we start something because it can make us money. That's not going to keep us successful. And do you care about it? And how much do you really care about it? And are you willing to spend the years to make it happen? To that point, did you ever feel like, I don't know if I can do this?
Oh yeah, all the time. There are days still where I'm like, oh my God, this feels so hard. Why did I start like a chocolate company or something that everybody's heard of? Like, introducing an entirely new superfood, sustainably sourced from a network of 2,000 small farmers. Like, it's a complicated business that we run. And it's not easy. And there are definitely days where it's like, wow, this is hard. This is really, really hard. But I think what keeps me going and what keeps my team going is the idea that it's often the hardest things that are the most worthwhile. And I think one of the things that makes me really proud is, I don't feel like I've made it in any sense of the word, but I hear from so many earlier stage founders who reach out and say that, somehow Kuli Kuli inspired them, and somehow, they felt like, oh, maybe I can start a business that's socially responsible and also makes money and, is in thousands of stores. And so the fact that our success can help pave the way for more socially responsible businesses is one of the things that I'm really proud of.
I want to pluck one of the things you said from that is it's almost in a way that you're creating a new category, because the product itself, I never heard about it before. Now, you don't sell it in Canada that I know of, but you can order it online though, right?
Yes, and we're in a few smaller stores in kind of the Vancouver area. So we're slowly making our way across Canada.
You're educating people first on what Kuli Kuli is, and then you're educating them on the health, and then you're educating them on the impact.
Totally. Yeah, there's so many levels. That was one of the more interesting learnings for me. I think coming into this was kind of like a bleeding heart Peace Corps volunteer. I was like, everyone wants to know about the impact. Like, that's why people buy. And we did so many tests at the farmers market and even, in-store demos and stuff. And really what we discovered is like nobody walks into the grocery store and says, I'm going to buy the most impactful thing on the shelves. Like that's not how humans think about grocery shopping. We think about what are the things I need? What are the things that are going to make me feel good? What are the things that are going to make my family feel good? Either feel good in a like, they're really, tasty. These Cheetos are going to make my, son happy, or feel good in a like, ooh, this powder I'm going to add to my smoothie and it's going to like give me the energy and nutrients I need to feel good, which is definitely the category we play in. So we find that we first really need to lead with like, what are the benefits of moringa? And what does this plant actually do for you? And then I think people share our story and get excited to share our story because of the impact.
There's so much research to suggest that organizations do make decisions based on social impact. However, there is a caveat. The product's got to be good. They don't just do it for the social impact. But have you noticed a loyalty, sort of like I buy it because I feel healthy, but I stay with you because I also feel emotionally good about the impact?
Yeah, 100%. I'll give you two quick anecdotes. I think, on the quantitative side, like we are in stores where we are next to other moringa powders that are lower priced, and I would, also argue lower quality than ours, but we sell better. We sell far better than they do. And I think that speaks to both the quality and the integrity of our brand, and the impact we're creating, the transparency we have, and really, people want to be a part of that, and they're open to paying, $1 more to be like, I want really high quality, high impact moringa. That's going to make my body feel good, and it's going to, make my soul feel good. And then I think the second thing is we find that a lot of customers will share our products with way more friends because of the story. So I was just talking to one of our customers, Taylor, the other day, and she was telling me, she's like, I picked up this moringa powder randomly at Whole Foods. I started adding to my smoothies. It made me feel so much more energized. And then I went on your website and watched your videos, and I looked it up, and I was like, this is amazing. Now I give it to everybody for gifts. And it was just like, that's cool. Thank you. And that's the kind of thing that I think happens when you have an impact.
Anytime I mention Africa, which is 54 countries and a massive continent, that people will say, oh, I know someone you should meet. The reason I mention that is because of the social impact you're having. Do you find people that are attracted to having a social impact in Africa are also those people you lead with the social impact and then appreciate the health benefit?
I don't think so, actually.
Okay.
And here's why. Because a lot of those people were the same people who, kind of similar to you, would come up to us at the farmers market or, the events and the demos and be like, oh, you did the Peace Corps, like my, daughter, cousin, friend, whoever did the Peace Corps, and like literally stand there and talk for like 20 minutes. And then they'd walk away and not buy anything. Because in their mind, it was no longer a business or a product. It was, a cause, and they were in kind of just a different nonprofit space. And so I think if you lead 100% with an impact, people go to a very different mentality. They don't go to a, ooh, yes, product I should buy. They go to like, this is cool. This is a nice cause. I feel great about it. And now I'm going to walk away and not buy anything that would like further that cause.
So it's a really important message, though, to always lead with quality, which kind of leads me to a question. Production is often where the money is made. There's the grower and then there's the producing. I believe you produce in US.
So we do both, actually. So the first level of production of, literally taking the leaves, washing them, drying them, and milling them into a powder is done in country. So it's, done in Uganda and Kenya and Zambia and all the different places we source from. And then once it comes to the US, it comes in like 25 kilo big bulk shipments in, like a shipping container. And then that is what we then take and repack into retail pouches. And then we also transform that into bars and transform that into shots.
Could you see ever doing that locally, the last part?
Oh yeah, that was the original idea for the business. And I think the challenge in that is that the way manufacturing works in the food industry in the US is that very few companies actually own their own factories, because it costs millions of dollars to set up a factory. And when you're a smaller brand like us, we're only producing bars every 3 months. Like we're not running that factory constantly. And so what we do is we basically rent time in a factory that makes, bars for us and then bars for tons of other companies. And so we can sort of pay as we go, as opposed to paying millions of dollars up front. And that's unfortunately just not kind of the same of what we've found in the countries we source from. There's not tons of factories already making bars or shots or that kind of thing. But I will say that, a good chunk of the value add does happen in country of transforming those leaves into powder.
In regards to quality control locally, what kind of system do you have in place? Because again, you have different cultures you're dealing with, different processes. Any advice that you can give to people on how you've gone about making sure that collaboration locally and you are working seamlessly to produce the best product?
It's by far the hardest part. I think it is, it's a very different level. And we're talking about lots of communities where people don't really understand the concept of bacteria. They're like, I rinsed my hands with water and they're clean. They look clean, so they're fine. Which is, certainly something that I know in this day and age has been a big education campaign in a lot of the African continent right now. But I think it's, for us, we need to find groups who really want to rise to those quality levels, who have a real interest and desire to sell to the U.S. market and to sort of scale up. We never go into a country and say like, you should do X, Y, and Z. Always either the farmers themselves coming to us, or, we often work through different nonprofits or through, at one point the State Department, different organizations like that. And I think we try to outline very clearly, like, here are the best practices that we've seen. Let's, try to work together to implement best practices. And then we test everything before it ships. And we'll never ask something to ship that doesn't meet our quality standards. And then we test it again once it's in the US. So we test it again once it's in our products. So we have a really, really high threshold of quality requirements that the product needs to meet.
So how did you establish the relationship with sort of the individual or individuals on the ground? Like, how did you find them? And then how did you establish that relationship to make sure you could get the quality product that you actually are delivering to the market?
I think it's been fascinating to me in this sort of globally connected world that we live in, how often, farmers in very rural parts of the world find us. At this point, we are the biggest moringa player in the world, arguably, at least as far as we know. And so we get requests all the time from, all sorts of different groups all over the world saying, hey, I'm growing moringa, I'd love to sell for you. And we have kind of a little form that we fill out just to understand, like, at what sort of quantity are you selling it? What are some of the quality requirements? And then also, what are some of the, social and environmental practices you have in place, and do those line up with our standards? So we kind of try to check those 4 boxes before we really engage.
Which are great 4 boxes for anybody listening to check before engaging with an organization, because it is complex. I do something very little internationally, and I couldn't believe how challenging it was to get the production and the communication, even though we spoke the same language. And because a lot of Africa does speak English, where you were is probably French, my guess. So.
Yeah, so Nigeria is French, but we now source a lot of the moringa we source from comes from Uganda, which is English speaking, Ghana, English speaking again. So it does vary a bit.
What advice would you give to other budding social enterprises that want to contribute to society?
First of all is, what is your unique idea? What is the need that you see? And have you validated that need? Have you, I think one of the biggest things is, have you talked to the people that you're trying to help? Like, is this a need that they feel, or is it just one that you observe? And how about the solution? Is it a solution that you develop with the community? Is it a solution that makes sense for everyone involved? Is it a solution that, everyone wants to really push wholeheartedly behind? And then if you're making it into a social enterprise, how are you going to make money? How are you going to make this sustainable? And I think it's one thing to have this amazing, impactful idea, but if you want it to be a business and want it to generate revenue, you have to make sure that the product or service or idea that you're selling is interesting to the market. So have you tested that? You're
a young woman, and probably very inspiring.
Over 30 now.
Yeah, but inspiring to women of all ages. And I don't want to just suggest young women. You said you were 22, and when this process started, sort of the light went on. Then you use this as an opportunity, a passion project, as you called it, and then you wanted to make money. Your expertise has been in communications. So what took you from political briefings to Obama to starting this company, to becoming an entrepreneur?
I think it's a really good question. I think it's a really important question, because I think there are so many women in particular who, say, oh, I don't have the business background, haven't started the business, I haven't worked in business enough or at all. I could never start a business. And I don't think that's true. I think a lot of the skills that you need to start a business is you need leadership, which I think a lot of women are great at. You need to be able to listen and empathize with people and inspire them and gather a group of people around your idea and get them excited and motivated to help execute it. I think you need to be able to, convey that passion and that inspiration to larger audiences, to investors, to the press, to gather momentum behind it. And then I think, that one of the things I'm best at is knowing where my strengths are and knowing where my weaknesses are. And, I can build a financial model, but it will take me a lot longer. It'll take, some of the MBAs on our team. And so It's my goal is to always hire people who are smarter and wiser than I am, and to raise the whole IQ of the organization. And I think that should be your goal, whether you're, an MBA, PhD business person or just starting out, is that know where your strengths are and hire people who complement your weaknesses.
Excellent advice. I remember getting that advice when I started to be an entrepreneur is, hire people that for what you're not good at. And I went, yes, that's a good idea. I've had a staff of 1,000. So when you started your organization, what did you envision? Did you envision where you are now, or do you envision something so much bigger, or are you just going with it until?
It's interesting because I think in so many ways this is a dream come true, and it's also just kind of the tip of the iceberg in that sense of, it is such an honor and a privilege to wake up every day and work on something that I feel so passionate about, and with a team who's incredibly motivated and passionate, and to feel like we're not just selling a food product, but we're selling a food product that, even in a small way, helps make the world a better place. And then I think, at the same time, I want to do even more. I think one of the things that really excites me is just there are so many plants all over the world that are incredibly nutritious, that are, many of them used in different kind of medicinal practices in different cultures that haven't made it to the US, but that by partnering with those communities and also, just partnering with our existing farming communities, we can help introduce more climate smart, sustainably sourced superfoods to the US market. So I think that's what the future looks like for us, is how do we continue to build on what we've started.
Have you ever done something that really made you uncomfortable, but if you didn't do it, you would not have achieved the success that you've had to this point?
I think a lot of things that I have done over the past 6 years have made me uncomfortable. I think fundraising in many ways is uncomfortable, and fighting for the valuation of your company and saying, no, like this is worth a lot, and this is going to be worth a ton someday. And so you need to believe in this, can be uncomfortable. I think, setting your own salary is a really uncomfortable thing. And, it's not like I just snap my fingers and say, this is how much I'm going to pay myself. But we have to get it board approved. But they ask me to figure out, what is the right amount? And that's a really uncomfortable conversation, I think, especially for a woman, because on one hand, I'm like, well, I want to put as much money as I can into this business and, get this business going. And then on the other hand, I work all the time, and, I don't want to be at a fifth of what my male peers are making. So that's been that was a really interesting conversation. I think negotiating with suppliers, because, our farmers, we want to create the biggest impact. And at the same time, if we pay way too much for the moringa that we source, we're never going to be able to sell it in the US. And so really coming to them, and I try and do it in a transparent way and say, hey, you guys, here's what we need to be at the price that consumers will accept on shelf. And here's the math showing you how we got there. But we need to work together to get there, because we can't be $10 more expensive than any other superfood powder out there.
And that transparency, I love that you do that, because in my experience, the perception is money's not an object in Western countries at times. So people often think you have tons of it when you don't. So that you show them that, I think is kudos to you. So they really appreciate the value, because they're not here. They don't know what the market will bear. Right. And I also appreciate that you said about your own salary, because I don't think that comes up a lot And, we know women empowerment, we value what we do, but when you have to put a dollar and then substantiate it to a board of directors, you've got to have a lot of confidence behind that.
Yeah, it's really uncomfortable.
Yeah, good for you that you've done it, but it's so I am curious though, how did you figure out the number? I'm not asking you the number, but what did you do to figure out the number?
It was kind of an interesting sort of looking at a couple of different things. So I think one, looking at companies of our size in the Bay Area, what are those CEOs on average paid? And then I think also just being and maybe this is too much humility, but it felt right to me to say, like, also, I would say that I probably have less experience than some of these CEOs. A lot of people don't start companies when they're 22 and run them when they're 32. So really figuring out, okay, given like what is my market rate and where do I feel comfortable indexing on that? And then also what do I think is sustainable and what can the company afford? So it's been interesting. There are definitely people at Kuli Kuli who I pay more than I do myself, because I think that they have incredible experience and their like market value is really high, and I want them as a part of my team. But I also feel like the amount I pay myself, I feel good about, and it is enough to sustain me and my lifestyle. So it's definitely a balance.
Folks, you've heard it first here on Wisdom Exchange TV. The CEO makes less than one of her employees, if not more. You don't hear that often.
You don't. And it's a distinct choice. For me, it feels fair. For a lot of other, especially male CEOs, they're like, why would you ever do that? And I'm like, well, because they have 40 years of work experience. And if they were to go out on the market, like, this is what they would make. And we got to get close to that if we're going to attract that caliber of people.
Appreciate what you're saying and look with awe and admiration, because that's humility and fairness. I love the word fair, and that you're bringing people, that's what they would get somewhere else. So you're not trying to compromise the integrity or the expertise of your brand because your ego is too big. So
Totally.
I'm going to wrap us up a little bit here with some sustainability, because of course, a good business, a good idea is nothing without sustainability. So what are two most challenges or hurdles that you've had in sustaining your social impact and ultimately the business itself?
One of the biggest challenges is striking the right balance in demand and supply, which for most of Kuli Kuli's history, we couldn't get our hands on enough moringa, that we were selling so much moringa in Whole Foods and Sprouts, and even, started working with Costco and Walmart and just like crazy volumes, and we couldn't get enough. And it's been interesting in this pandemic era where we're actually at the point where we've had to cut our sales forecast really dramatically, just given that, retailers are focused on keeping their current products on shelf, and our products are doing very well on shelf, but they're not bringing in any new items, which is often where we see a lot of growth. And so that means that we, for one of the first times in our company history, have had to say, actually, our farmers want to sell more moringa than Kuli Kuli can buy. And so we've now been thinking about, well, how do we connect them to other buyers in Europe? What are other creative ways that we can sell moringa to other companies? Kind of different tactics to, make sure that we don't leave them hanging. And so that definitely, I think, one of the biggest points of challenge with a fast growing startup and an entirely new commodity, where like we are by far the largest player. Like, our farmers tell us all the time, they're like, nobody buys moringa the way you do. So really just trying to be cognizant of not over promising what we can purchase. Hard to do.
Again, just such a great point though, is that all these people are producing for you and you want them there. So looking at other partners or collaborators perhaps makes good business sense, making it easier for them so that they don't get sidetracked with another opportunity either. Speaking of the pandemic, would you do anything differently? I mean, no one knew this was coming, right?
Yeah.
Not to the degree and not for as long. And I don't think it's going away anytime soon. Business is altered as we know it. But just let's say you did have a crystal ball. What advice would you give to help sort of maybe the dip in sales, because you can't, the grocers are not buying new product. Is there anything that you could have done differently?
It's a very good question. I think, had we had a crystal ball, we probably would have tried to ramp down purchasing and production, kind of towards the end of last year, instead of, we were supposed to launch into 800 new Walmart stores in April. We've had all these other big retailers that were supposed to bring us in June. And so we ramped up a lot. And that has definitely been challenging because we're now have all this inventory and it's not as easy, to move through it as we had anticipated. And I think we're in a good situation in the sense that moringa has a longer shelf life. We're not talking about like a dairy product or something like that. So I think we'll be okay. But, we've had to make a lot of budget cuts that have been not fun and none of it's fun. And so I think, if we had known, we would have kind of tried to keep our inventory levels a lot lower. But, we have managed to keep our staff, and that is something that I'm really grateful for, and something that's, really important, is that we're able to keep our team strong.
What are you doing to prepare for recovery? Because I know in different parts of the States, stores are opening, different parts of Canada, things are starting to open a bit. Is there anything that you're going to do in sort of this resurgence?
So we are focusing a lot on digital because I think that is where consumers are right now. And I think, they say that the shift to e-commerce has accelerated at least 5 to 10 years. So when people start ordering groceries online, they're like, oh, actually, this is kind of easy. Maybe I'll just keep doing it even when things open up. So we've put a lot more focus there, and they're trying to do, go bigger in e-commerce. I think we are also, trying to make sure that we keep our forecast very conservative, which I think, when you talk about startups and entrepreneurs, we're often very ambitious, and sometimes we knock it out of the park. And Kuli Kuli has certainly had years where we exceeded our sales goals, and we took our whole team down to Mexico to meet a moringa farmer, and it was awesome. And I hope to have one of those years again. This is not that year. So I think for this year, just really making sure we watch our spending. And that, we keep in mind that there could be a second wave, and that if things open up, but then they close back down in the fall, that could, continue to affect our ability to get much new business. And so we just need to be prepared for a world where our forecast is cut quite a bit from where it normally is.
What role does collaboration play in the social impact and sustainability of your company?
It's huge. I mean, I think Kuli Kuli would not be here without the collaboration of so many different people and organizations. And one of the organizations that, really gave us our first foot in the door was Whole Foods Market. I came to them when we were literally hand making moringa bars in a commercial kitchen. And, one of the buyers kind of, I don't know what she saw, but she was like, this, I want to bet on this. We're going to authorize you in all of our stores. And then we proved ourselves there, and they, within 2 years of our business, they had taken us nationwide, which was just a huge milestone, a huge acceleration. We've been able to partner with organizations like the Clinton Foundation, And more recently, just incredible investors. So Kellogg is one of our investors, Griffith Foods. So two really large food companies who also actually care a ton about the mission and small farmers, and do so much to just help us get out there in a bigger way.
As I've talked to many people about collaboration, is there anything that you do to structure collaboration, to optimize it for long term?
So I think there's both internal and external collaboration. And I think, externally, one of the things that I do a lot, which, is not everyone, how everyone structures it, but I'm very transparent with where we need help. And so when people ask, like, how is this going? I'm like, this is going great, but this is an area we're struggling. And I find that honesty is so often beneficial, because they can say, well, I know somebody who knows someone at Kroger who might be able to connect you there, and you might be able to get a meeting, and it turns into something bigger. And then internally, I think, that's one of our core company values. So we've got a 12-person team. We're a small startup. We need everybody to be working together and collaborating well. And so just really making sure that our team knows how important that is.
In your experience, what impact has your business had on the communities that are growing your product?
I think that's been, the most exciting part for us, is that we've seen that, people have like more income than they've had before. They have this extra cash, and they use it to send their kids to school, or to, provide better food for their families. They use it to invest in, moringa school feeding programs, which we often will help support those. It's just really cool to see the impact that can have, and how, moringa as this sustainable crop can be something that really provides a livelihood for them year round.
I just have a little bit of a fun game. Are you up for it?
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. Okay. Fun little rapid fire. So I'm just going to ask you some quick questions, and just first things that come to mind. All right. So what is the one thing you wish you knew prior to engaging down this path?
How much money food companies cost, how much you have to raise, how expensive it is.
Yeah, so Kuli Kuli, yeah, that would be pretty important. Great. Worst piece of advice you ever received?
Somebody told me that this was a lifestyle business and passion project that would never make it big, and so he was like, I don't know if you really want to throw yourself into this.
Best piece of advice you ever received?
Actually, to work at a startup before starting my own, so kind of in between Peace Corps and going full-time on Kuli Kuli. I worked at another startup, and to specifically learn how to fail on someone else's dime, which has helped a lot.
So I'm going to just give you a few words, and what first comes to mind when you hear it. Anything goes. It's all good, Lisa.
Yeah.
All right. Community.
Farmers.
Purpose.
Mission.
Meaning.
Work.
Contribute.
Forbes, only because I'm a contributor to Forbes.
Conscious.
Consciousness raising is sort of what I think about.
Raising. Gotcha. Sustainability.
Moringa.
Collaborate.
Team.
Consistency.
Leadership.
Learn.
Every day.
Lead.
By doing.
Legacy.
I think of like Muhammad Yunus or some of the other people who've left legacies that I want to leave.
You.
Learning.
Me. The general me, not me.
Okay. Me. Woman.
We.
Strength.
That one gave me shivers. everyone, thanks for joining us, and particularly Lisa, some really great insights and learning for people who want to start a social enterprise, but more importantly, to people who want to sustain a social enterprise. So you can subscribe on Wisdom Exchange TV so you receive each new interview notification in your inbox. Please share this interview by going to the share button located on this page. You'll also see a transcript and blog feeds as well. If you know someone who had extensive social impact in business, education, civil service, or advocacy, let us know. Put their name forward and we'll do our due diligence and find out if they fit with our profile and really are having the social impact while making it sustainable. Lastly, if you know someone who's contributed and you want to celebrate them, we invite you to youmewe.ca, Your Contribution Counts campaign. Put their celebration there, because every time you do, YouMeWe Social Impact Group will donate $1 to a woman's business or education to move them from poverty to prosperity. Now, I am going to give our guest the last or second last word. Lisa, is there any words of wisdom that you would like to give to our audience?
I would say find the idea that won't go away and then fully commit yourself to making it happen, and that dreams can come true. You don't need an MBA, you don't need a business background to start a business. You need a lot of passion and a lot of grit to see it through.
Love that. Thanks so much for sharing with us today. And for everyone, until next time, make your contribution count.